Hello, welcome to Fishamble. We're in the meeting room of Fishamble. I'm Gavin Costick, the literary manager of Fishamble, the new play company, and today I'm delighted to say I'm joined by playwright Deirdre Kinahan, and we are here to talk about her new play, REFUGE, which is a co-production coming your way between Fishamble and Stats Theatre Mainz. And if, Deirdre, by the way, you can admire Deirdre's plays here, which she didn't know of, but we put them out for her, which you can get from Fishamble. So this is a part of a series of works. We've worked with you a number of times. I'm really pleased to be working again. I wonder, can you ease us in by saying, how did this co-production, how did the idea, where did the impulse come from for this particular project?
So this particular project is quite unique and very exciting, I have to say. It came about because as a playwright, I've worked with Stats Theatre Mainz in the past. As well as with Fishamble many times. And Stats Theatre Mainz is a state theatre in Germany, and they've translated and produced some of my plays. And one of the plays was actually Rathmines Road, originally produced by Fishamble. And there was an amazing core of actors in that play. And I went over to see the play in Mainz, and I met Jörg and Boris and a lot of the team and got on really, really well with them. And a relationship began to develop between myself and the theatre. And then I was approached by Jörg, the dramaturg, to write a play for them. They wanted me to commission me to write a play for them about a group of Germans who came from that region to Ireland in the early part of the 18th century and settled here, and their descendants still live in Limerick to this day. So I think what happened was Jörg was over in Ireland at one or two festivals and became aware of this story of the Palatines, the German Palatines in Ireland. And when he dug a little bit deeper, he realised there was some kind of a story of emigration and settlement, and asked me would I be interested in writing a play about it. So that was the start for the whole project.
And a way, maybe we'll ease our way to talk about it, because it seems like a play or a story that's very about then, the early 18th century, but also very about now, because it's about shifting boundaries, power, who gets the land, and so on. So it seems like a very current work. But if I take it in steps, how did you go about finding out?
Well, that's it. I mean, as soon as I was approached to do this, I said, oh, lovely, I can go off and find out who these people were, where they came from, what they were trying to escape, why they came to Ireland. But I couldn't help thinking, this is at a time of, immigration into Ireland. And this is at a time of kind of great jeopardy in terms of world culture and our society in people's response to emigration. So from the get-go, I thought, okay, I'm going to find out who the Palatines were, where they came from, how they ended up in Limerick, what was their life in Limerick, but I'm also going to connect that in with a contemporary story of emigration. And I wanted to look at the story of a young person coming from Afghanistan or from Africa into Ireland in the present day, and some way link that story into this older story of emigration into Ireland. So what I did was, as I always do in these instances when I'm asked to write a play, is I go to the country of origin. So initially I went to Limerick, to Rathkeale, because that's where the one group of the Palatines settled. And there was this amazing old Castle Matrix, by a river. And it was a really atmospheric kind of place. And on that estate, there remains a Palatine village of these very solid Germanic houses built in a kind of a semicircle around a village green in the early 18th century. And families like the Bonavisers and the Leaguers and the Switzers still lived there. And I thought, this is incredible, that these descendants are still an active part of that community. So I met them.
Yeah.
and talked to them
Yeah.
and spoke to them about their lives now
Yes.
and what they knew about their ancestors.
Yeah.
And I got a sense of the terrain and the area and the landscape. And then I also kept thinking, I associated Rathkeale and that part of Limerick with the travelling community, because there's a very large travelling community in and around that townland. And I thought, you know, this is very interesting that you've got a group of people like the travelling community in Ireland, part of our society now, who have always been kind of othered, and they live next to a group of people, the Palatines, who have kind of in a way held on to their distinctive otherness.
Yeah.
And I thought, that is going to be a mirror or a way in for me to tell this historical story and to bring it into the present. I invented a story through meeting a young Afghan boy in Dublin who told me his story. And I took his story and I brought that into Limerick as well.
Yeah.
So that what we have is a play that looks at the story of a young man, Zabi, who has emigrated into Ireland in the present time, and after an altercation in Dublin found himself hiding out in a broken down castle in Limerick. And when he's there, he meets the ghost of a German woman who came so many hundred years ago. And it's through her story we learn his story. And then through the story of Molly, who's a member of the travelling community, who kind of connects Abby with the ghost of Hannah, that we learn this kind of repeating story of people moving from one end of the earth to the other in order to just try and live a life. And it just felt very evocative and very relevant and very beautiful in a way.
Great. But when I was hearing you speak there, I felt I could start to see things in my mind, and see the castle and the houses and the green and the ghost. If I can be a bit more technical, as in a playwriting thing, as this is a co-production and the way in which plays are made are not quite the same in Germany as in Ireland, how does design come into it? Do we imagine you, in a sense, designing the world of the play like you've described it there into a script? Are you working with designers? The director's Jim Cullerton, and the whole thing is being made by both German and Irish theatre practitioners. How is that working?
Well, that's actually part of the real magic of this play and this production, because it's a complete collaboration. You've got half of the actors are German and half of the actors are Irish. I know those German actors, I've worked with them before. I know these Irish actors, I love them and I work with them very regularly. So I have written the parts for a suite of Irish and German actors. I have had the privilege of collaborating with Steve Wickham, who's a really good friend of mine and a long-term collaborator, who is creating an amazing suite of music that wraps around and underpins this story. Matthew Williamson, a brilliant dancer I've worked with before, is creating a choreography. So, and then of course I work with Jim Cullerton so regularly, and yourself, Gavin, in developing scripts and developing stories. And as a playwright, you always have an eye to the design. I'm not prescriptive at all, but I've got to understand the world I'm creating in order for designers to interpret it. So what's really thrilling about this is that we have German designers, German costume designers, German producers working with the Irish choreographers, the Irish director. So it's a real mix of creative energies and cultures.
I think it's fair to say in your work with Fishamble, the work would be noted, you know, if you come to see the work by Deirdre, for its emotional intensity, for its big and interesting, exciting characters, and grounded in real experiences and real lives, and some would say politically. Here, do you feel it's a bit different with the scale? Like, are you able to go a bit further in terms of set, ghosts, costumes, and dance? Is that part of this project? We come to this project, do we expect to see something big.
Yes, I think that I think that this is not only an epic story, but it is a large scale production.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, Stadttheater Mainz is a major state theatre in Germany.
Yeah.
So we are looking at a large scale. We're looking at large resources.
Yeah.
So from the get-go, I wanted to have an element of dance, to have an element of music in it. And when Fishamble agreed to come on board as co-producers, it's quite a jigsaw to make it work for both the German production style and the Irish production style, because in Germany you have repertory companies. So you've got a company of about 40 actors constantly working with that theatre, but working in 6 or 7 productions at any one time in that theatre. And yet in Ireland, we all work freelance, contract by contract. So we tend to rehearse here for a period of 4 weeks and then do a show for 4 weeks. Whereas in Germany, they will rehearse for a period of 6 to 8 weeks. And then they do a show for 3 days 1 month. And then it's on for 4 or 5 days the next month. Because with a repertory theatre in Germany, on a Monday you might have a play, on a Tuesday you've got an opera, on a Thursday you've got a ballet, and then on the Saturday you're back to the play again. So all of those actors, they work full-time permanently in Germany in a suite of plays, and they had to kind of reconfigure how they operate and how they produce in order to marry that with our more nimble way of working. And that has been a huge part of the project as well, is kind of figuring out, the technicalities, and also, the two approaches to how you make plays. As you said, I tend to write very big stories through very small lenses. And you get a reflection of that in Refuge. There's a family story about a family from Germany travelling across Europe, arriving in Ireland, fleeing one war, only to find themselves planted into another war. And then you've got this story of this lovely young man who's forced to flee Afghanistan because his father is murdered by the Taliban. And he travels right across Europe, arriving in Ireland, and is beset by a set of difficulties. So they are two small family units, but they speak to a really huge issue that is affecting the world at large today.
Big question coming your way.
Okay.
Well, I mean, but precisely that. As a playwright who's found a voice, who has a voice, whose work is nationally and internationally presented in many languages, in many publications, how conscious of you now are you now of that? So this is sort of the last question for today. Is how conscious are you of that, both in the work that you're doing, that you're thinking about the unstable world in which we live and the things that are happening, and also outside of that? Do you feel now, you should speak publicly about this, that, or whatever, where do you feel you're at as a playwright?
Well, I mean, I've got 4 plays premiering this year, Gavin, in Ireland: Refuge, The Homecoming of Joseph Grace, Exile and Adrift. And all of those plays are about immigration and refuge and exile and that sweep of humanity being swept across the world since the dawn of time. Because I feel that it is the kind of great issue of our age. And I feel very, very strongly about it, in that I really truly believe that our humanity can override any fear, any suspicion, any hatred, all those dogmas that seem to have come round and round and round again to beleaguer people as they simply seek to live a life. They need to be faced down. They need to be discussed. they need to be presented to an audience in a way that is imaginative, that is both challenging and embracing, because we're all part of this society, we're all part of this community, and this problem doesn't necessarily have to be a problem.
Yeah.
You know, it can change our lives, our communities, our worlds in a very positive way, in the way it always has.
Yeah.
Because one way or another, if people are desperate, if people are facing war, if people are facing difficulty, they will come. In the same way that the Irish people, for generations, had to travel all over the world to make a life for themselves, other people are now looking to us. And I really think it is the question and the story and the issue of our time. And it's affecting every family and every community. And I cannot help but write about it.
That's great. That is a really great area for us to go to wrap up. So it's really great, Deirdre. So in the end, to remind you, this is Refuge, new production. You can see it in Germany, Staatstheater Mainz over the summer, and then here in Ireland, in the Lime Tree in Limerick, and Pavilion later in the year, Limerick, and then Staatstheater Mainz again. That's it for the moment. Normally I say, and it'll be on again in the future, but I won't. You have to see it then. That's when you need to see it. And I think, you know, it's been fantastic to hear about Deirdre. I think it's a play we're very much looking forward to seeing. I think a play that I feel people need to see in this country, and it would also be a play that I think I'm really relishing, looking forward to the theatrical invention, scale, ghost stories, human stories, love stories, the richness of the experience is something I'm really looking forward to.
It's a good story.
It's a good
found
story.
a good story.
With that, thank you very much for coming in today. Thank you, Deirdre Kinahan. Thank you.
Thanks a million. Thanks, Gavin.